Jake should have left the house the moment he heard the voice, but he didn't. Instead, he followed it, up the stairs, step by step, until he reached the end of the hallway. That's when the voice changed. It wasn't crying anymore. It was laughing. And when Jake turned around, the door behind him slammed shut. That was the moment he realized he wasn't alone in the house, and whatever was inside had been waiting for him. At the far end of Maple Street, just beyond the last row of houses, stood a place no one in town liked to talk about. An old Victorian house. The paint had long peeled away, the windows were cracked, and the tall iron gate surrounding the yard was covered in rust. Children were warned never to go near it. Adults crossed the street whenever they walked past, because 20 years ago, something terrible happened there. The Carter family once lived in that house. A father, a mother, and their young daughter named Emily. From the outside, they looked like a normal family, but the neighbors began noticing strange things. Lights turning on and off late at night, strange scratching sounds coming from the walls, and sometimes the sound of a little girl crying. Then one night, the noises became louder than ever. Neighbors called the police, but when the officers entered the house the next morning, the Carter family was gone, completely gone. No blood, no signs of struggle, just one disturbing detail. Scratched across the walls in dozens of places were the words, "She is still here." Jake had only lived in the neighborhood for 2 weeks. He was 17 and already bored out of his mind.
Do you see the haunted house?
Yes.
One afternoon at school, his new friends started telling him about the house, the haunted house at the end of Maple Street. One of them said. Jake laughed. Haunted houses weren't real. At least, that's what he believed. His friend Marcus didn't laugh. Instead, he leaned forward and said something that made everyone else quiet. "Everyone who goes in there hears something." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Hears what?" Marcus looked serious. "A little girl asking for help." Jake rolled his eyes. "That's just some stupid ghost story." Marcus stared at him for a moment before replying. "Then go there tonight." Later that night, Jake stood outside the rusted iron gate of the house. The wind rustled the tall grass around him. The house looked even worse up close. The windows were dark. The wooden porch sagged slightly under its own weight. Jake pulled out his phone and started recording. "All right," he whispered to the camera.
I have to see what's in there.
"Just proving there's nothing here." He pushed the gate open. It screeched loudly in the silence. Jake slowly walked toward the front door. The door was already open, just slightly, moving slowly with the wind. Jake hesitated, then stepped inside. The air inside smelled like dust and old wood. Jake's flashlight beam moved slowly across the room. Broken furniture, peeling wallpaper, cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. The house had clearly been abandoned for years. But then Jake noticed something strange. Footprints, fresh footprints in the dust. Someone had walked through the house recently. Jake slowly followed them into the hallway. And that's when he heard it. A faint whisper, so quiet he almost thought he imagined it. "Hello." Jake froze. His flashlight trembled slightly in his hand. For several seconds, the house was completely silent. Then the whisper came again. "Can you help me?" It sounded like a little girl. Jake slowly turned his flashlight toward the staircase. The voice had come from upstairs. Jake swallowed nervously. "Hello," he called out. No answer, just silence. Then the whisper again, from above him, "Please help me." Jake stared at the staircase, then slowly began climbing. At the top of the stairs was a long hallway. Several doors stood closed, except one. At the very end of the hall, it was slightly open. Jake walked toward it slowly. The door creaked as he pushed it open. Inside the room sat an old rocking chair, moving back and forth on its own. Jake felt the temperature drop instantly. Then the whisper came again, right behind him. "Why did you come here?" Jake spun around. Standing in the corner of the room was a small girl. Her dress was old and dirty. Her hair covered most of her face. Jake whispered softly, "Emily." The girl slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were completely black. Jake stumbled backward in shock. Behind her, the walls were covered with scratches, the same message written again and again. "She is still here." The girl slowly raised her arm, pointing toward the hallway. Her voice trembled. "Don't let her find you." Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed from downstairs. Slow, loud. Something was walking through the house. Jake turned toward the hallway. The footsteps began climbing the stairs. Emily's expression changed instantly. She looked terrified. "You need to hide," she whispered urgently. The footsteps stopped outside the door. Jake held his breath. The door slowly began to open. The door burst open. Standing in the hallway was a tall, shadowy figure. A woman, her face twisted with anger. Her eyes were empty and lifeless. Emily screamed, "That's not my mother anymore." The shadow rushed toward Jake. Jake turned and ran. Down the hallway, down the stairs, through the front door. He didn't stop running until he reached the street. The next morning, Jake's friends waited for him at school, but he never arrived. Later that day, police searched the old house. They found Jake's phone on the floor, still recording. The final seconds of the video showed something chilling. A little girl standing in the doorway, looking directly into the camera, and whispering softly. He didn't make it out. Now, when people pass the house at night, they sometimes hear two voices inside, a little girl and a teenage boy, both whispering the same words. She is still here. And if you ever find yourself near the end of Maple Street, remember something: some houses are empty for a reason, and sometimes the things inside them are waiting for company. Before you leave, tell me in the comments, would you have entered that house? And don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might be even darker than this one.